I want to welcome everybody to this is the sixth in our planned first six pack of courses on leadership, and it's been a wonderful time. I really enjoyed working with you all. It's been a good group and a chatty group. I'm getting a lot of nice notes on both on LinkedIn and Twitter and through other channels. So, we're going to go through some material today, but, before we do, I just want to thank you all. It's weird doing everything completely virtual. We don't get to see people a little bit. Like my advantage in working with Cybrary is I've had a chance to meet the team and visit the facility. And, when we're virtual, it's just an extension of that physical connection. But I sure wish I could meet all of you in person. You just seem like such a nice group of people who've participated in this. And, wish you all well. So today, there's two things that I want to accomplish. One is I want to go through some design here. Now, it's a little different. We were talking about all this career stuff, but this is still career because what I want to do is show you the way I would explain basically cloud security to a board, okay? So I'm going to take you through it, and you're going to see there's no math, there's no code, and there's not a lot of words, but I can show you through some pictures how we go from a busted, broken perimeter to something that I would propose would be a much better design for enterprise. So people frequently ask me to come and speak to their management teams. And I always try to do it in pictures and diagrams and make things simple and show people that there's no steps. One of my favorite cartoons of all time is the two scientists. There's all this math and then some more math. And in between the two math, there's a circle that says, and then a miracle happens. It connects one thing to the next. Like, I think that's so funny because so much of what we explain is that. And I'm going to show you today how you can get from broken perimeter to a distributed, virtualized, secure enterprise, resilient, modern, exactly what I think every Fortune 1000 company should be set up in terms of architecture, just by clicking through some pictures. I've been doing this for years. When I was back at AT&T, I had the great opportunity to work with some extremely creative folks there. We had a creative team that did this thing called Tech Channel. Barb Lang ran the thing. I loved working with that group. And she and I had the idea of doing a little flip book. Like we had a paper book where we flipped through some pictures on transitioning an architecture. And I've always kept that idea in mind. This is 50 generations past what we were doing back in 2000. But I kind of think those were the earliest times anybody was talking about virtualizing to cloud. There's an old video floating around somewhere from a service that we'd been building at Bell Labs back in the 90s, early 90s, called EasyLink. Maybe so. I think there's some AT&T people who've been listening on these calls might remember that. My boss, Tom Curtis, I remember his spouse at the time, Audrey Curtis, ran that thing. And they made these commercials. It might have even, I guess the early 90s, that talked about cloud. They said your email be in the cloud and it's accessible and it's ubiquitous, and literally had pictures of fluffy clouds. And, and I remember thinking, wow, what an incredibly cool way to describe things. I personally think that was the first time any group had ever really referenced cloud in that manner. But that you'll see today, I'm going to take you through a couple of designs. First, I'm going to show you a simple, basic thing on defense in depth. And then I want to take you through the cloud progression. Then if we have some time afterward, we'll do some rules and I'll look at a couple of books that I might recommend. So we can skip over that. Here's a typical sort of way that someone might go about, for example, explaining defense in depth. And I know a lot of you are security experts, so you might, say, that's right or wrong, but I just want to illustrate the point. If someone were to explain to you how to WAFs, IPSs, and firewalls work together in a defense in depth arrangement, if your instinct goes to a bullet list with a lot of words, I hope I can convince you that there are better ways to explain these things, because most people don't absorb lots and lots of words on PowerPoint charts. So this is the way I would do it. I would show, like if somebody asked me, how do these three things, a WAF, an IPS, and firewall, I'd draw these web apps, or whatever, but in this case, I drew them as web apps and show that a firewall is put out here somewhere, or a gateway perimeter is put out here to protect an enterprise of which these apps are part. And an IPS is going to probably complement that, maybe at a more local level, like looking at network traffic within some segment. And then finally, a WAF is going to focus on the specifics of a web app. So what happens is anybody out here trying to hit your web app is going to go through a firewall. It's going to be watched by an IPS, and it's going to have some WAF that understands the handshake between a user and a web app. Do you see the point? Like, this simple cadence of picture, 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 for me, has always been a very effective means for communication. Now, look, you may decide that there's some other way you want to communicate, but promise me that you'll come up with something. We need to have a way of simplifying our dialogue and making it easier for someone to consume the ideas that you're sharing. How much time have we spent in the last 5 weeks just talking about communicating effectively and having others ingest and understand what we're trying to get across, our point. And I believe that pictures are the way to do that. But maybe you have some other way. But the point is that the explaining defense in depth, for me, this is what I would do. You might do something else. Now, what I'd like to show you is how I would propose to explain what I think is the central problem in cybersecurity, certainly enterprise cybersecurity, and that's that the way we've been set up has been a mess. Nobody on the planet ever said this sentence. Nobody ever said, gosh, I wish we had more cybersecurity vendors in technology. Nobody says that, because we've got umpty-ump vendors and more technology than we can even imagine or ever in a lifetime try to understand. The challenge is snapping it all together. And that's a challenge because startups can't do that, and consultants have trouble. Us come from you. So building a clear picture of what you're trying to do is part of the challenge of being a great leader. Like, these pictures, the next 30 or 40 clicks here that I'm going to take you through, would be the way I would show a team how we're moving architecturally. It's a way of showing somebody the future, showing a vision for what I think makes sense. And there's really no bullet points or sentences or anything. It's just labeled arrows and bubbles and lines. And you'll see what I mean. So let's go through it. And be very interested to see what y'all think. Because it's not so much that I'm suggesting that you do this, but that you do something, that you have a style or a way of getting ideas across in a way that is not only compelling, but also maybe entertaining and fun and creative. Bullet lists on PowerPoint screams, I didn't have time to prepare for this. It just screams that. If your materials are dry or a bunch of spreadsheets, and it's just you got it from somewhere or you cut and pasted from books, take your time. If you're not good at doing the art, get someone on your team who can help you and work together. But create things that you'll be excited about showing. So here's how I would explain, say, to a board, this protection by design point in the context of perimeter. We'd start with this idea that every auditor on the planet is lied to, because we all tell them that we've got a primary control called a perimeter, firewall, a bunch of firewalls that are making sure that there's a nice, safe inside and an unsafe outside. You all know that that's a bunch of hooey. But let's explain how. So we would say, this is the presumption that someone on the outside, a filled-in circle here, making some access to the perimeter, is disallowed. Like, this is our goal. This is what we wish we could do. And this blob is all of our either physical, virtual, or hybrid assets that we care about. But traditionally, this has been a perimeter. This is inside, and out here is outside. And we would say there's a bunch of internal things going on. We've got assets. And here's a circle. This is an insider. This is an example of somebody who has access to our internal assets. And you can explain the inside problem as, well, look, I'm trusting that an insider here is going to touch these assets unabated. I have trust. And you can use that in a sense to explain the zero trust model. Like this is infinite trust because there's probably no authentication. It's just direct east-west access from a trusted insider to some Microsoft SharePoint or files or directory or repository or whatever it is, some asset. You're just hitting it. Whereas out here, I can't get access. But if this circle went away, then I got a problem because this is someone who really should not be touching these assets. If the big oval here went away, then that in a sense is the definition of zero trust. When that goes away, I got a problem. These assets don't know if the empty circle or the filled in circle are trusted. I don't know. Suddenly they have to provide some protection and do authentication. I don't know if this is this or this is that, or and so on. Zero trust is when the oval goes away. You get the point, like that's a way of explaining to someone visually what zero trust is as we're on this journey to demonstrate how the perimeter has dissolved. So here's the next sort of thing. We can put some more crap on the inside. It's like, this is just general internal asset, but here we put some real meat on it. So here's a user, info, data, email, product, DevOps. So these are all the labeled things that you might